Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am so stoked to announce that I have Trinidad Burgos. He is the host of the Night of the Creepcast podcast. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good. How about you, Mr. Sledge?
I am doing very well. Thank you for coming on. For those of you that don't know Night of the Creepcast podcast, can you give these guys a little bit of what you do? You've had some pretty amazing guests over there, too. Mr. Damian Maffei, one of our good friends, has been on there with you. So can you give us a little bit of what you do so these guys kind of understand it, too?
Yeah, so what I do is I try to do what's not really seen very often. Sometimes with most podcasts, you see where they don't exactly put all of the, what's the words I want to look for? I guess time into it, which whenever I was previewing your podcast, I could appreciate that you actually took the time and effort to research and do what you needed to do to actually make sure, hey, I'm going to ask these good questions. So I try doing as many deep dives on the movie as I can. I try getting my hands on all of the Blu-ray copies to make sure I get all the commentaries. And normally what I'll do is I'll watch the movie along with people, and then I'll comment on it. I'll give facts every now and then I'll just give my conversation and my likeness and what I like about the movie while we're watching it.
That's so awesome, dude. I'm glad you're like me. I'm a big special features guy. I'm a big physical media guy, so that's something I can appreciate as well.
Yeah.
You've got some pretty big names over there, man, so you're doing pretty good things. I love what you're doing. Guys, check it out. It's down here in the description. Go give him a listen. Check out what he's doing. He's working really hard, like he just said. It's something that we all do. It's a horror community. We all care about each other so much, and I really support what you're doing over there, and I'm so glad that you took the time out to come over here and kick it with us for a little bit, man. It really means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot as well to me, that you even came to me and asked. That means a lot.
Oh, no problem, man. Like I said, I'm a fan. I listen, so it's something that I really enjoy. So once I heard you had Mr. Maffei, that's my dude, man. I love Damien to death. He's such a down-to-earth, cool dude. He's still so grounded, and he's so appreciative of everything that he gets. So Damien's one of the guys that I got his back, man. He's such a good guy. So if he's your people, then you're my people. That's how I look at
it. Yeah. I'm speaking of Mr. Damian Maffei, I'm actually really looking forward to the Time's Up movie that he's doing, because that poster is beautiful. Like, I don't remember the last time I seen a poster that actually caught my attention like that recently, and then to be able to look at it. And Haunt, that was another movie that he was in that caught my attention too.
Fantastic.
I love that movie. So I'm waiting for a Scream Factory exclusive to come out on that, because that's going to be pretty good. And I'm waiting for those special features as well.
Yeah. And when you were just talking about Time's Up, not only the poster, because that poster is super dope. When he dropped that, I was so stoked. But how high they all talk about Time's Up. Everybody that's a part of that movie has nothing but the best things to say about it. So I'm with you. It's a movie I am very, very much looking forward to. Elsie Holt has a part of that as well. So it's something that I'm super stoked to watch. I'm glad you brought that up too. So we're over here pimping Damien stuff, man.
And on location. Might as well talk about that too. I thought that the concept for that was really cool. So I'm glad that there's kind of like a back-to-back thing going on there. And also being able to have Felissa Rose a part of that cast. My girlfriend and I love Sleepaway Camp. That's one of our top favorite movies right there. So just, And
Felissa Rose is such a kind, sweet lady. And and also, Damien, he's doing the Wrong Turn reboot. I mean,
the Foundation.
So you've got, like you said, Time's Up, On Location, the Foundation, the Wrong Turn reboot. This guy is busy, and yet he still takes time to come out and kick it with some fans. So nothing but infinite love and respect for that dude. But we are here, if you guys can't tell yet, to talk about the first horror movie you ever watched to set your wheels in motion.
Yes,
and your first horror movie was?
Saw, 2004. I was desensitized at a young age, a very young age.
So that's so awesome, man. And it's cool because I did an episode recently with my son, and that was his first horror movie. So this is a movie that really does mean a whole lot to me, not just because of, obviously, it was my son's first, but to me, this helped right at the right time to revitalize the horror genre, and it kind of gave it a shot in the arm when it comes to, even though I hate the term, the torture porn aspect of horror.
Yeah.
This really did give it a shot in the arm. So, how old were you when you watched this movie for the first time?
This is gonna sound really bad, but I was about 6 or 7 whenever I first saw it, and that was probably a bad time because that's whenever you're young, you have that whole thing where you're scared of the boogeyman in the closet. So whenever Zepp has this scene where he's peeking out, man, that used to mess with me whenever I was younger. And then recently, as I grew older and grew more love for horror, I look back at that shot and it reminds me a lot of Black Christmas whenever Billy's looking through the doorway. So I don't know if that was an homage or not with that scene, but I definitely appreciate it.
As well as the puppet being named Billy.
Billy, yeah, Billy.
Yeah. So, do you remember who you watched it with, where you were at when you watched it for the first time?
I do. So I was at my grandmother's house, and I was watching it with my grandfather. So my grandfather, and I remember that scene specifically because he went to go use the shower. He went to go take a shower. So I was in the room. It was late at night. It was dark in the room. And just sitting there staring at the screen and seeing him pop out, I kept glancing over at the closet next to me. I was sitting on the bed and just immediately covered up, threw the blanket over my head and stayed under there for a bit. But it was a good movie to start me off with because it just grew my love for horror, and I obviously wouldn't be where I am without Saw, and I appreciate it very much.
And there's a lot of movies that wouldn't even be here without Saw. Like, Saw really did start a generation of movies. Which scene in the original Saw affected you the most, and why? Do you think it's the closet, or is there something else that affected you a little more?
The closet was definitely something that always stuck out to me because, also, like I said, being a young age and having that whole boogeyman stigma was not traumatizing, but it always, it heightened my fear of closets. So I would say that definitely. Yeah, actually, yeah. It was definitely that from a young age.
Mm-hmm. And I see it's funny because I never even really took that into perspective, but I'm a little older than you. I'm old man over here. So but that's why I like to do this, man. I have people that are like, well, just an example, like I want to do Alien. Has anybody done that? Well, yeah, people have done it, but it doesn't matter because I'm talking about your perspective. And now I'm learning something about the film that I can go back and appreciate when I rewatch it because of how me and you were talking about it now. So I think that's really rad that we can go back and talk about this and I can gain a different perspective on it. Even though I'm a little older, I can go back and rewatch this scene now and see what you were going through when you watched it for the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely an experience. Like if you put yourself in someone else's shoes and just try to think of how that could have affected them, then it really starts getting the hamster in your head turning on its wheel, and it's like, man, I can understand how traumatizing that could have been to you. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's why I love to do this, man. It's so much fun to learn these things about everybody. So when somebody brings up the movie Saw, you're in a conversation and someone says, have you seen Saw? What is the first thought that pops into your head about this movie?
I just pull out my phone and I pull out a photo of him. Of course I've seen Saw. That was my first film, and I wouldn't own Mr. Billy here if I didn't appreciate the film and love it.
Awesome,
so.
Man. So that's incredible. So we talked about the first scene that popped in your head. We talked about the scene that kind of scarred you the most. But what's your favorite scene in this movie?
I definitely love the reveal at the end because I was too scared to finish the film. So it wasn't until the second time. So I finished watching it, but by the end of it, I didn't see that small segment with John Kramer whenever he rises up and there's that shock that comes over Adam's face because that whole time he was, he thought it was a dead body. He was sitting there talking about, wow, I've never seen a dead body before in person, and just that shock that comes over him the last 5 minutes of the film, he's just his jaw dropped.
He can't even move for a little bit.
Yeah, he was so scared, and then whenever he finally musters up the courage, he gets a little taste of that zap, and then he was game over.
Yeah, that's it. That's a wrap. So we talk about right now your first horror movie, but I want to go scream on you here real quick.
Yeah.
You have to choose your favorite. What's your favorite horror movie?
Favorite horror movie in general or out of the two?
Yep. Favorite horror movie in general.
I'm a sucker for Tom Atkins. I love me some Tom Atkins. So I would definitely have to say the three-way tie between Halloween 3, Creepshow, and Night of the Creeps. I'm going to have to say Night of the Creeps because it has just a little bit of everything, and I love the casual like homages that they have in there with, you know, some of the characters' names being director's name. You know, example, Cynthia Cronenberg. I mean, that was one of the main ones that stood out to me. So it's like,
that's awesome, man. And I like the fact that you bring up Halloween 3 because I always talk about how much I truly, truly love and enjoy that film and how I'm going to remake it someday.
man, send me that link. I got you. I'll be your first customer. You got a Patreon. I got you.
That's my favorite Halloween movie, hands down. I think that if that movie was just called Season of the Witch and it was its own movie, it would have had sequels and it would have been a huge hit. But just because it was Halloween 3 and it didn't have Michael Myers, it's not treated fairly. So that's one thing that I definitely bums me out about that movie.
Yeah, well, Carpenter had a hard time with this film because that wasn't the only film that kind of failed at the box office. I know The Thing didn't do too well whenever it first came out as well. So there were a lot of his movies that pretty much became cult classics with time and not immediately.
Right.
But, I mean, they're great movies.
Yeah, you look at The Thing, that's one of the best horror movies ever made.
Yeah. Kurt Russell, man. I love that film so much because of the practical effects. I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but that is the thing. If you're looking for a good movie with practical effects, that is one of the first movies I would recommend you personally because I absolutely love that movie.
Well, that movie is, to me, one of the movies that is that's what you go for. Like when somebody's making a movie with just practical effects, that's what you watch. Like that's what you're going for. That's what you want to be. And we've talked about it. That's why I think the 2011 Thing sequel or prequel or whatever you want to call it, that's why it fell so flat because of all the CG effects. I've never even seen it. It's a movie I've never even watched. I've just been told by so many people about how bad it is. Actually, I just had a friend of mine send me a link, and I'll send it to you. But they did the whole movie with practical effects. And then they went in and post and changed it all with CGI. And you watch some of the practical effects they did, and man, I hope someday we get like a practical effect director's cut of this film so we can see what it actually would have been like.
Yeah, that would be great because that's what made The Thing now at least so memorable. Like, one of the main things that I really loved, and just by the way, rest in peace to Wilford Brimley. He just recently passed away, but I loved how deceitful his character was, and I love that dark comedy aspect that he had with his character. So he's up there with my favorite characters. Obviously, McCready. It would go McCready, Windows, and Mr. Wilford Brimley. So
yeah, and it's funny because I always say my top two favorites when it comes to practical effects are The Thing and Nightmare on Elm Street. The first Nightmare on Elm Street has amazing practical effects. From the wall to the blood coming out of the waterbed, like everything is just so great. I'm glad you appreciate practical effects because I am a huge practical effects guy. It's something I'm very big on. I talk about it on almost every episode. There are newer movies where they're taking the practical effects and doing the CGI with them just to give them a little bit of a boost. I do love that, but I'm not a full-on CGI guy unless we're talking Star Wars. That's about
that's where you can kind of sit down and be like, look, I have an understanding now because it's not on Earth. I mean, it's on different planets and certain places are shot on Earth. But
I mean, like I said, any science fiction that uses a lot of practical or CGI, I can forgive you when you're sci-fi, but I don't want to watch Nightmare on Elm Street with a CGI Freddy glove. That's not what I'm about.
Whenever you talk about that, the main thing that comes to mind, and that's another key thing that ruined the movie for me, was the remake. Whenever they redid that scene of Freddy coming through the wall, you got to give me that elastic. You got to give me that original. Or else
I am not. And I've talked about this before too. I am not one of those people that thinks remakes and reboots are inherently bad. I think there's a lot of really good remakes, a lot of really good reboots. But if you're going to remake a movie like Nightmare on Elm Street, which is a practical effect genius movie, and you do it, and you do some of the same exact scenes, but you're using CGI on them, it takes away from the original. Now, to me, the perfect type of remake would be Dawn of the Dead, even the Child's Play that just came out. I think that's a perfect remake because they take ideas from the first one, but they completely spin it and make it their own. That's what I'm looking for in a remake. I don't want to go and watch a carbon copy of the first one. I want you to take these ideas, I want you to modernize them, and I want you to make it scary again. Yeah. So I agree. I was not a fan of the Nightmare remake. Everything from CGI to him being a pedophile, I was not a fan of any of the Nightmare remake. The only thing that I liked even a tiny bit was the micronaps. I thought that was pretty dope, because you can't escape. No matter how hard you try to stay awake, you can't escape it. So a couple more questions for you about Saw real quick. You had to choose. I hate saying favorite because that's so dark, but the kill that stuck with you the most, what do you think your favorite kill in that movie is? Which trap, I guess, would be your favorite?
It would definitely have to be the shotgun trap. Detective Tapp's I was going to say associate. That's not the word I'm looking for. His partner. Yeah. That was definitely one. And I just rewatched it as well, just to get myself in the mindset again of what I felt when I was younger. And I still felt that same feeling with the whole Zepp scene. I actually peeked over my closet a few times, and I was watching it with my girlfriend too, so I kept messing with her because she kept looking over at hers, and I was like whispering to her the same way he was in the film. Comedy gold. It was great.
To be honest with you, man,
just a little
I got
bit
it right here, so I'm gonna rewatch it tonight so I can try to feel that anxiety for the closet scenes that you felt. That's something I'm really looking forward to rewatching this tonight, man.
Yeah, I know I'm saying that one scene a lot, but that's it's the scene that stuck out with me the most. I mean, like I said, the whole boogeyman thing when you're growing up, the monster under your bed, and then to actually see that in a film, your worst fears, right in front of you, pretty much.
Well, to be honest with you, man, I've had people on this show do Jurassic Park, and I got a lot of people telling me, well, that's not a horror movie. Bullshit. That is a total horror movie, man. That's a dinosaur slasher is what it is. And if you think about it, man, that movie traumatized a lot of people as a kid to the point where Fangoria ran Jurassic Park on the cover when that movie came out. And there was people that were writing into Fangoria pissed off, this isn't a horror movie, blah, 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 blah. It's all right, let me lampoon you on Jurassic Park Island and see how it turns out for you. You put yourself in that position, and you got the raptors. I think it's a dinosaur slasher, man. I love Jurassic Park. And my point is, I don't care. I had someone do The Watcher in the Woods, which is, it's a Disney movie. Yeah. But I want to know what scared you for the first time, what your first reaction to horror was, what started you on this. Oh my gosh, that was terrifying, but I love that feeling. I want to feel this more. So if it was Jurassic Park, if it was Willy Wonka, the scene where he's on the boat and it's spinning, and that's what I want. I want that first experience of a movie that scared you so bad that you just had to keep going. You had to keep watching these films. Yeah. I asked you about your favorite death, your favorite kill. Now, Saw, great franchise. If it was only 1 through 3, it'd be probably my favorite franchise of all time. You're choosing the only Saw, one of them. Which one's your favorite?
Man, that's a hard-hitting question because obviously this was the movie that started me off, so it feels wrong not to say the first Saw, but there's some kills in the other movies another trap that stuck with me for a long time was the Guardian Angel trap. Whenever she had the cages put into her and then it just rips her open. Yeah. That was one that stuck with me. And I actually really liked the gore of that. So it was more so the effects that stuck with me, more so than the scare. But whenever I watch Saw or like you said, I know you said you hate the term, but torture porn movies, The Collector and stuff like that, I try putting myself in that situation of how I would react and how I would, go throughout the situation. I was trying to tell myself, all right, well, this is what I would do, that's what I would do. But in reality, that fight or flight thing comes into mind whenever you're into that situation. You don't really know how you'd actually react. You tell yourself that you'd be calm in that situation, but if you wake up in a rusty, garbaged bathroom with, stains and stuff all over the wall, you're going to freak out. You're not going to know what to do.
Your mind goes blank at that point. If you wake up, like you said, in the guardian angel trap, you're not just going to be like, well, I got to rationally think about how I'm going to get out of here. No, you're going to be scared. Your body takes over. Instinct takes over. Yeah. You don't know what to do. Your body shuts down. So that's one thing I always loved about Saw, because you have the argument, is John Kramer a murderer? Is he not a murderer? Because he doesn't really do it. I've always been in the boat, dude's a murderer. If it wasn't for him, these people would be fine. Just like, John Kevorkian, Dr. Kevorkian. I don't know if you're old enough for Kevorkian or not, but, if he's assisting suicide, he's still assisting. That's still death. So not to get political, but to me, John Kramer is absolutely a murderer. So one thing I always do to end the show, we rank on a skull count, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. We're ranking Saw 1. What is your ranking on a skull count, 0 to 5?
When I was younger, it was easily a 5 because of the closet. But growing up and, getting more into it and realizing that I could put myself in that situation, I know this breaks your meter, but I would definitely give it a 10. Like that, being able to put myself in that scenario and think about how I'd react, and then later learning that some of these traps were rigged, that you weren't going to live whatsoever. Once again, it's game over. You can't do anything about it.
And that's what I love about it. They took what John Kramer did, and when you get to Amanda, they really upped the ante. Sequels in horror have always upped the ante. For me personally, Saw 3 is about the peak. I think Saw 3 is the best one. But
that's actually my favorite. Sorry to cut you off, but that's my favorite. I didn't say it earlier. I just realized that I was talking about the Guardian trap and completely started on that trail. So yes, part 3 is definitely my favorite.
Me too. I think that's the cream of the crop. I mean, to me, when it comes to the twists of all the movies, 1 obviously I think was the best. Nobody's seen that coming. If they said they did, fucking liar. But 3, that's another one where when you find out that he was testing Amanda the whole time, and that to me was it was poetry in motion, man. That's about as close to Alfred Hitchcock in any of these Saw movies that we could ever get, because it was a twist, but it was a big love story twist too. And I'm a sucker for that, man. I'm a sucker for love stories. So that's something to me. I love Saw 3. I think it's absolutely brilliant. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're clicking this link in the description to go listen to his podcast. One of my good friends. I'm so glad I got to have him on here. Remember, guys, stay what you are. Keep talking horror, and we'll talk to you guys soon.